Hi everyone, and welcome to another midweek astrology update brought to you by 1millionnights.com. Today we have a really powerful and influential sky from both sides of the spectrum, if we can call it that way, where there is a lot of tension, there is a lot of karmic energy in the sky, but at the same time there is also a harmonious and beautiful grand fire trine in the sky held by Mars, Venus and the galactic center, and this is the most positive side of the spectrum, but I am not 100% sure if this grand fire trine is powerful enough to balance out the negativity that is basically starting to build up from an astrological perspective. And because the key player here is the moon, the symbol of our emotional world, the soul, and of course all of our unconscious energy, this is where I am not sure if there is enough strength and power and clarity within our conscious mind to somehow counterbalance this energy. But of course what I'm trying to say here is not exactly that everything is black, everything is doom and gloom, there is no hope, faith has no power here. That is absolutely not what I'm trying to suggest, but rather this is like a really powerful wake-up call, reality check, grounding, the truth hits us. And all of this energy is triggered by the divine forces. So chances are, it doesn't matter what we have in our lives as human beings. It doesn't even matter how very proficient, balanced, strong our inner world, our inner connections are. This is where no one is actually immune to this energy. Because the big picture, that which most of us cannot really see because we are so immersed in emotions and dramas and hurts and pains, is that the divine source, the karmic forces, are actually trying to help us. But of course, this gesture of help is very painful because the essence of all of this is to purge out all of our illusions, from the smallest ones to the big global collective illusion that basically all of humankind, because we are basically interconnected individuals that form the whole, the unity, well, it is that collective illusion that is being purged out from our minds, from our hearts, from our unconscious, and that is painful. There is no reason why we should go in circles and describe this. This is the energy of pain. This is the energy of disillusioning. This is the energy which reveals to us that basically all of reality, everything that we live every second of our lives, is illusionary in nature, because it all depends on our perception and nothing else really. And our lives are determined by our unconscious patterns, by our beliefs, by the polarity and the balance of the thoughts that we think every single second of the day. So ultimately, is there right and wrong? Is there greater truth and illusion? Or is everything truly the same? It all depends on our perceptions. And ultimately, this is the biggest truth of all, out of everything, even the most sacred divine principles, that there isn't objective truth. Objective truth, basically, is just a principle, it is just an aspiration of ours, but it cannot exist in the human world. Nothing is objective, nothing is absolute, nothing is perfect. There is no perfection in the universe, because the universe has its essence rooted in imperfection, because only imperfection can lead to evolution, and basically only imperfection supports free will. And if this is how basically the universe, the macrocosmos is built, well, that represents that our inner worlds, our inner structures, our souls, our minds, everything about us is just as imperfect, just as flawed, just as subjective, and it all depends on us and nothing, no one and nothing else really. The only governing principle that actually affects us, and we have absolutely no saying in this, is basically the karmic law, action, birth, reaction. Every single gesture, every single act, every single word spoken basically reflects back at us one way or another, and this is what we cannot really escape no matter how much we try. Of course, unless we reach the level of enlightenment of the Buddha or the Christ, etc. But I'm not sure that in modern times that is a rather healthy aspiration. Because under the present circumstances, that is just the road to martyrdom, and no one's gonna thank us for that, not even the divine. So, long story short, this week is gonna be a period when the universe and the karmic forces, the great divine intelligence, reminds us that earthly existence is all about pain, all about suffering, all about our attempts as human beings, as material entities who also embody a spirit. Well, it is our journey not just to survive, but to pass through life as gracefully as we can possibly manage, despite the pain, the suffering, the obstacles, the limitations, the frailty and weakness of the body, of the mind, of our inner cores. If we have sufficient self-love, if we have sufficient belief in ourselves, in our stories, one that which we create. So basically, fate is like a double-edged sword. Yes, we do come here with certain conditions and requirements and a schematic of how our lives, our destinies should play out. But we also have a great influence in that by our choices, by our beliefs, by our thoughts. Everything that we do influences our fate. So basically, it is a co-creation. We are not really slaves to anyone or anything except our own mental spheres. And if we want to change profoundly, that is where we have to go and change the patterns. But of course, even that has limits, because changing our own patterns, well, that doesn't mean that other people are going to do the same. And what depends in our lives of other people, well, that area is not that susceptible to change unless we break up our connections and just free ourselves. But in these times, that's not really possible. So there is an energy of change, profound change, ambition, determination, willingness to change what we can. But at the same time, that Pluto tells us that in certain areas of our lives, we are totally powerless. We have absolutely no influence or power over anything. And that requires us to surrender and to accept and not dwell on it. Because surrendering and accepting but falling into a deep depression and just destroying our beings from the inside, well, that is not a constructive surrender. A constructive surrender is when we simply accept it, that we have no power over it, and we move on. We don't dwell on it anymore. We close it, we discard it. Even if it's an obsession, even if it's a very strong desire that we want to accomplish, well, if the universe and our fate and everything shows us that right now it's not possible, well, the best course of action is to just put it back on the shelf and not dwell on it, not let it upset us, not let it, destroy us and eat us up from the inside. Because no feeling, no passion, no desire from the inside is worthy die over it, to fall ill over it, to basically send us in a state and frequency of self-destruction. It is simply not worth it. Life force, life energy, the life that was given to us is the supreme value in everything. So that is why it is our greatest duty and our number one duty in this material world to take care of ourselves, of our lives, of our beings. It doesn't matter how we manage, it doesn't matter what technique and methodology and coping skills we use, as long as we offer ourselves at least a minimal degree of comfort, safety, happiness, joy, because with that we can actually overcome any pain, any obstacle. But in order to do this, in order to be successful at basically surviving gracefully, we need a lot of self-knowledge. And that is exactly what the sky is forcing us to do. Discover who we truly are on the inside. But this is where no gurus, no mentors, no teachers, no astrologers, no one can truly help us. No one can truly guide us except ourselves. Where we have to just sit down with ourselves and ask the most painful questions and have the courage to confront them and accept the answers which source from our own divine intelligence, from our divinity, from our unconscious mind. If we truly want to be honest with ourselves, well, everything that we need to know about the self, our destinies, our lives, even our futures is right there. You don't need to go to anyone to get answers. You just need to be totally honest with yourselves, to believe that you are capable of understanding even the most complicated karmic chessboard, so to speak, and then believe the answers that you are getting out of sheer intuition. And even though some of those answers will definitely not resonate with the values, with, everything about modern society as governing principles, well, that is exactly when you know that you're doing it so very right. Because if society would be governed by different principles, well, none of us would be here in this situation, suffering this massive economic, social, political collapse, which is inevitable. So basically, if the truth that you are getting from your inner world, from your unconscious mind, from your divine spark, is basically not very resonant with, the governing principles of modern society. For example, work hard to get a car, to have a flat, to have money, resources, to just make yourself happy in a hedonistic way. Don't be kind, don't be charitable, don't be merciful, because it's an act of weakness and people will take you for a fool, etc. All these unwritten rules and even, some written rules as well. For example, the salary is a reflection of your worth, or basically the time in your life that you have invested towards working, career, etc., to serve other people or to build up your business is also a reflection of how valuable you are as a member of society. Well, all of that is so very illusionary, because if we take a look at why we came here on this earth, well, it has nothing to do with either work, career, society. We're actually here to experience what being alive and, existing physically on a planet, in nature, and among other beings animated by the soul actually means. We are here for the great experience of life and not really anything else. Anything else is just an option. But, no one alive today actually realizes that it is an option. Everyone, because it was so very deeply programmed inside of us that we need to work, that we need to do this, that, etc. well, we think that that is the essence of life, that is why we came here, that is what we came here to do, and that is so very untrue. Because chances are, many individuals, many souls, so to speak, are repeating life over and over again because they fail to understand that that is just an option if you feel like it, if it's convenient for you, if that is who you are on the inside. Then of course, go and do it and be passionate, be creative, constructive, do whatever it takes to accomplish your dreams and desires and your goals, because there is a high chance that that is part of your journey, of your destiny. But if all of this is forced upon you or programmed inside of you, inside your unconscious mind, well, then chances are you are not going to achieve anything in this lifetime from a karmic and spiritual perspective, because that is just giving your divine purpose away in order to just exist materially. And of course that means it doesn't matter how well you do, what you do with your resources and your earthly power, even if you run a charity, if that is not your destiny, if that is not why you came here, well, chances are you're gonna repeat the life over and over and over again until a moment comes when, you actually realize that you're just here to experience life, or a layer of life which, you lack on a soul level, which sparked up your soul's curiosity before you came here. Or perhaps a big lesson, or something that you need in order to grow as a soul. And for many, many people, it is actually something negative, like overcoming a massive blockage, a trauma, a pain, a loss, a bad start, for example, a bad familiar situation, or a troubled family that you were born into. All of these things belong to so very many people's karmic path or destiny, so to speak. And all throughout their lives, they keep fighting it, they keep blocking it out, they fear the pain, the sorrow, etc. When all it takes is a moment of courage, when we just say enough is enough, let it come, I'll confront it, and I'll decide what I'm gonna do with myself, with my life afterwards. And it's exactly after a moment like that, after a moment of maximum courage, when you do this, all of your life, your destiny, your luck, everything changes, because you embodied that very powerful lesson which this existence of yours should have been all about. So even though, yes, doom and gloom, depression, fears, anxiety, traumas, hurts, pains, heartache, broken heart is part of this week's astrological configuration, but this is actually a blessing in disguise. There are certain moments in time when pain and suffering is the true blessing. It is the true awakener. It is the true motivational force. Because when life brings us so down that we have absolutely no other chance but to tap into our divinity, because there isn't anything else in our lives, in our existence, that can help us, not even spiritually, only the self. Well, that is a moment of massive breakthrough. That is a moment when either, life and destiny, the universe, makes you or breaks you. And this isn't just true in the lives of individuals, but actually the emphasis is on the human collective, because this is the changing of times, the changing of eras. This is how we abandon an old paradigm and step into the new, where it is internally, psychologically, our mentality, our thought processes that have to be new, that have to be original, that have to be truly us, which we bring into the new era. That is what actually makes it new, and that is how the old customs, the old paradigm, the traditions, how things used to be until this very moment change. because as soon as we let it go from the inside, physical reality has to reflect it, especially when millions and millions of individuals do it at the same time. So enough philosophy, let's speak about the planets a little bit. Well, on one hand, the moon is conjunct Neptune, so this is basically stirring up our inner ocean of emotions, our emotional world, our feelings, our dreams. This is how it's pulling the unconscious energy to the surface, because tomorrow the moon not only forms this full moon phenomenon in the sign of Aries, but at the same time it is conjunct Chiron. That is our wounds, that is our traumas, that is our ancestral hurts and pains that we inherited either from our families, from our culture, from the country, region we were born in. And also at the same time, Mars retrograde is going to be conjunct Lilith and Eris. That is aggression, frustration, anger, an inner volcano that's about to erupt. And we can see this playing out on the world stage as protests, violence, individuals going against centralized power, law enforcement, the military. Basically, this is where everyone on their very own unique and special ways are gonna be really, really agitated, unsettled. And this is the emotional response, because that Mars, Eris and Lilith are squaring a very, very powerful Saturn, because it is exactly today when Saturn stands still in the sky and prepares to go direct tomorrow, and its symbolism is greatly amplified. And Saturn's symbolism in the sign of Capricorn is exactly external, material, social, political limitations that suffocate us, that take away our rights, take away our happiness, take away our freedom. And of course, for the individual, that can very well be inner limitations, psychological limitations, or limitations that other people represent in their lives, especially those who take away their power, those who take away their freedom, those who basically bind them with moral obligations, legal obligations, etc. And at the same time, Mercury is in the sign of Scorpio, almost perfecting an opposition with Uranus. That is a very strong unconscious energy. That is basically us navigating through all of our past, all of our memories, nostalgic feelings, but also traumas, everything that hurt us, but at the same time, everything that gave us great pleasure. And this is gonna get more and more intense as Mercury starts slowing down, because in about 2 weeks it's gonna go retrograde in the sign of Scorpio, and that's gonna be a very, very intense psychological purge energy, because at the same time Uranus is gonna oppose it, so it will mean very painful truth shocks. It can also represent disclosures, secrets coming out, skeletons being revealed in the closet on the world stage, and that can also provoke strong fears, strong emotional reactions from all of us. And ironically, Mercury in shadow is going to be its most intense exactly on election day or around election period in the United States. So that represents that there are going to be errors, there are going to be unexpected twists and turns of events, confusion, everything might be delayed, or the results might be, delayed, or they will have to redo the whole process. There is bound to be some kind of errors or confusion or misunderstanding there, which can highly influence the situation. And if you have elections in your culture around this time, even the present moment is included, well, you can expect, errors, confusion, having to redo the whole process, etc. And of course, as I said at the beginning of this video, there is a great grand fire trine in the sky, Mars, Venus, and the galactic center, and that is a celestial infusion of courage, but we have to use this courage in a very, very wise manner, because if we simply tap into our inner strength, our ambition, our determination to make it, to survive, but not through any means necessary, but gracefully, with honor, by preserving our own dignity, well, that is the motivational force that can basically trigger the hand of fate, the galactic center, the infusion of raw creational energy inside our souls, where with this gesture of wanting to face what life, destiny, and the changing of these times throw at us, that gesture of courage is enough to trigger a powerful divine intervention, or, a miracle, maybe an unexpected divine help, because the sun also forms the quincunx with Uranus, and that can be surprises, especially surprises from unexpected people entering into our lives. Now, because these energies are so very heavy, I also decided to complete this horoscope with a spiritual guidance using tarot cards. And these are the cards that have appeared. So first of all, the Hermit. Now this is a clear indication that, everyone basically in our lives is gonna be feeling this energy. So everyone is gonna remember their hurts, their pains, their past, their obstacles, everything that makes them feel powerless to change their lives. So everyone is going to be rather agitated, aggressive, passive-aggressive most of all. So the Hermit tells you that choosing sacred solitude just to be okay in your own psychological shell, distancing yourself from other people, from the world, from society during these very intense couple of days is the very, very best idea, because you can use this strong fire energy, the Ace of Wands, that retrograde Mars conjunct Lilith conjunct Eris, to nurture yourself, to ambition yourself, to change your principles, to change your faith, to change your beliefs, to purge out all of your guilt, all of your shame, everything that is limiting you, and ultimately use this strong Mars for self-nurturing, self-love, building up your self-esteem purposes. It is very, very simple. As long as you're okay with yourself, as long as you're proud who you are on the inside, as long as you don't regret your decisions, as long as you live in forgiveness, forgiveness towards other people in the past who have wronged you, disadvantaged you, forgiveness towards the self for all the mistakes and bad decisions, well, that is already enough to turn the tides of this, how should I even say it, psychological fight for survival, where it is not just, limitations and physical threats that we fight against, but also the profound uncertainty of the future, which actually sends our inner beings into fear. No matter who we are, when the future is this uncertain, everyone kind of fears it a little bit, but what we do with that fear, that is what truly matters, because if we do not allow the fear to basically dominate us, dominate our inner worlds, that is like a gesture that we project onto the divine intelligence and basically show it that we have learned and embodied the essence of the human spirit, where we don't have to be slaves to our instincts and basically our bodies. Because this fear is more neurological, it is rather rational, because it makes a lot of sense when we basically don't have any guarantees that anything good is going to happen in the future, or even if we have a decent future, well, that is already enough for our brains to, start playing tricks on us and start, agitating us to do something. For example, to try to find out what our true options and possibilities are in the future, even if this would be absurd in the present moment, because there is simply not enough information for this. Or it could force us to do like desperate gestures, go like hide in a bunker until all of this is over. But when we show the universe that we do the exact opposite, that we have true faith and trust, not that it's gonna help us in the sense that it's gonna intervene and magic our lives back to normal, but that it created us with the inner virtue, strength, power, and know-how that we can survive this, we can overcome this, we can make it. And that is true faith, and that is true self-worth, because we trust that we were created potent, competent enough to survive all of this. And that is a faith, that is a principle, or basically a very positive psychological unconscious programming that if we insert into our minds, that can always advantage us, because no matter what life throws at us, it is that program that's gonna be active, that we were created to bear this cross no matter what, and not the opposite. For example, the fears that, oh, this is over, doom and gloom, it's the end of the story for me. And the program which runs in the time of crisis makes all the difference. And that is exactly why this reading is closed by the Two of Swords, clarified by the Judgment. Sometimes ignorance is truly bliss, and ignorance is the best option possible when we have to detach from the dramas, pains, and hurts of other people, because let's not forget that we are born alone and ultimately die and make that transition to spirit alone. Being alone is part of the human and earthly existence. That doesn't mean not to help others, not to be kind to others, not to encourage and inspire, etc. others, but it means this is the time when we truly have to block out the suffering, pain, the fears and hurts of other people, but not allowing it to sink into deep in our own souls. We're not allowed to absorb their energies. We can listen to them, but it goes in one ear and immediately exits the other ear. This doesn't mean malevolence. This doesn't mean apathy or not caring. This just means that we focus on the other person, that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes, that half an hour, until they share their story, and we support them and inspire them and whatever. But after the session, so to speak, is over, we detach completely, because otherwise they will just poison our inner beings. And this is where no one is to blame. What can other people do? They have to share their hurts and pains. And of course, it is somewhat our duty to listen to them and to try our best to advise them. But that's it. It ends there. And that is exactly why the Two of Swords reversed is clarified by the Judgment. The Judgment represents our perception, what we think, how we feel, our sentence, so to speak. So when we judge ourselves, we shouldn't really judge ourselves by other people's standards, but purely by our own standards. And that does require us to block out in that special moment when we make that judgment. May that judgment be a choice, what we think about another person, what we think about the selves, what we should do in a certain situation, etc. This is where we truly have to be us. We truly have to be authentic on a soul level and make a choice, make a judgment, or perceive things, the world, etc. in a certain way where it's not influenced by others or another people's situation, or basically the patterns, the cycles of how things played out in another person's life, because everyone has their own karma, everyone has their own destiny and karmic path to walk. So how a life of a certain person is, that might mean absolutely nothing to us, because we have different rules, we have different forces playing, internal and external in our lives, so the situation can never really match. And going back to the hermit, this is how we protect our beings, and this is how we block out all the fears and negativity coming from external reality through this gesture, this act of sacred solitude. And if it's possible, what you do in that sacred solitude of yours, well, do things that bring you soul level pleasure. If it's listening to music, reading a book, playing a computer game, philosophizing, daydreaming, journaling, doing whatever brings you like a soul level calm and pleasure. Because those truths about yourself and your situation, which you necessarily imperatively have to acknowledge and confront, are gonna just enter your life, your mind, your soul almost automatically. So you don't really have to seek this. Neither do you have to simply dwell on it and contemplate for hours and hours. Simply just allow during these very strong and heavy emotional times. I think all this reading, all the horoscope, everything that I have said until this present moment can be compressed into a single and very, very simple prayer, which I mentioned all throughout the week. It is the prayer of serenity. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Grant me the courage to change the things I can, and ultimately the wisdom to know the difference. I think this concludes everything that we have to do in order to survive gracefully and preserve our inner virtues, values, everything who we are on the inside during these very turbulent, karmic, and psychologically unsettling times. Well, thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you enjoyed it. And please remember, if you'd like a personal reading, just log on to 1millionnights.com, where you can find your dedicated advisor. And also, we have a very special promotion. If you buy any of our prepaid packages, you get 10% bonus credit. Thank you again for listening. Wish everyone a safe and drama-free day. Until next time, bye for now.